what up, Long Beach? Welcome back. There is not a group happier that high school football is back in Long Beach than the group sitting right here, about to bring you another episode of Long Beach Sports Talk from the Press Telegram and the Gazette newspapers here in Long Beach. I am co-sports editor JJ Fiddler to my left.
Co-sports editor Mike Gardabasio, and to my left,
unofficial swag king Tyler Hendrickson, letting you know that if you have a team event that you want to get catered, get several hog packs at Naples Rib Company. It's a great choice. Delicious.
Can I add something else also? I just got word that Naples is doing some of their catering at Skylinks Golf Course, which means if your team and your program are trying to get more than 200 people into a banquet, they can now do that. You don't need to get stuck in that back room at Naples Rib Company, even though we love getting stuck in that back room at Naples Rib Company.
They've got the gold-plated Hall of Famers on the wall back there.
It's out there, folks. If you want a big party, get a big hog pack.
Our other sponsor of this show and everything we do at GazetteSports.com and the videos that we produce is Papalucci's Restaurant Italian on the west end of 2nd. We spend a lot of time in there. Anytime we've got a visiting athlete coming back into town, we always take him in there. Chase DeYoung has been there with us. I don't even know how many times for those garlic rolls.
Yeah, dude, garlic knots. 2 words.
Show.
That's all.
Sounds good.
That's all we have to say.
Let's do it.
Hey, we got on a roll last week with offense in football. I mean, usually 0 week is just a bunch of defensive highlights and penalty flags. Yeah. But last week we got some things that, I don't know, we haven't seen since Al Bundy went for 7 touchdowns.
The garlic knots of the Moore League right now, Donald Gordon putting up 335 yards and 6 touchdowns against our T-shirt.
Say that one more time.
The garlic knots.
No. Stat line.
335 yards and 6 touchdowns.
I wouldn't believe it if you weren't there, Mike.
I mean, I was not surprised to see the numbers on that video jump up so quickly, because literally people kept texting me like, did Gordon really go off? And I literally responded to all of them with, there are video highlights of this game. You should just go watch them.
I don't want to kill your vibe, but think about this for a second. Donald, 6 letters.
Yeah.
Gordon, 6 letters.
True.
6 touchdowns. 6 points each. Illuminati!
Oh, well, that's exactly what we needed. Well, speaking of Illuminati,
thanks, Tyler.
Cash ruled everything at Wilson, which isn't anything new, but Cash Maluya, the junior quarterback
from Paramount,
leading the Pirates to an emotional and pretty exciting victory against the Bruins. They ended up winning that game 35-34. More impressive than his 188 passing yards and 96 rushing yards. More impressive than his 5 touchdowns, one of them running. More impressive than it was his first varsity start. Kid went 4 for 5 in the fourth quarter for 91 yards and 2 touchdowns to a true freshman receiver, Eric Lavelle Fuller Jr., for the victory. That is primetime in your first game.
Maluya, do it to ya. Impressive. I'm excited to see him this week.
Oh, yeah, they got a big game. Yeah,
check that out. But one more thing about Donald Gordon. Thomas Barnes, who was a coach at Jordan for quite some time, is now at Milliken, the offensive coordinator there. So he's been working with Gordon, and he sort of went on record in the feature I had out on Gordon on Wednesday of this week, saying, I think he's a Moore League Player of the Year. And the last 2 times he said that were John Timu and John Ross, both Jordan kids who became Moore League Players of the Year. So now we have 2 All-Americans at Poly who probably perked their ears up when they heard that. But it's going to be interesting because 335 yards and 6 touchdowns is a thing.
Without question. Hopefully we'll get to see some more things happen this week. I don't think we're going to go wanting for big highlights with some of the games we've got coming up, and we are going to run those down for you right now. Very quickly, if you're not already doing this, follow us on Twitter at PT Gazette Sports. You have got to follow us on Friday night because we will be at all the other high school football games that you can't be at.
And help us with the drive to 5, because we're trying to get to 5,000 followers, and we're very close.
Turn up.
The amount of hype surrounding the Long Beach Poly Jackrabbit home opener on Friday night, 7:30 Veterans Memorial Stadium against Narbonne makes our hype video look like another rerun of Leave It to Beaver.
Going with Leave It to Beaver, huh?
All right, no. Leave It to Beaver, reruns.
No, but that's absolutely the case. I mean, when's the last time there's been any home opener with this much excitement and talk and anticipation? I mean, there's a lot going into this game, and within the last decade, I can't really think of one.
No, I think 2001 was definitely the last time you had that feeling that, like, oh, it's just the first home game, it's non-league, but everyone feels like they have to be there. You know, I mean, they're I would encourage everyone to go to that game, but also plan on getting there early and plan on maybe even buying your ticket ahead of time, because I think the excitement around, okay, what are these Friday night games going to be like at Vets with the new coach, with Antonio Pierce, everything he's done for the program. But there's so many storylines. There's the new coach and the new era, and the first time you're going to see him at home. They're going to come out in a fresh set of uniforms, which I've been told are going to be very memorable for everybody to see.
Historically memorable.
They're advertising it as a blackout night for the fans, which I think always drives up some interest. They're going to sell $10 poly black football T-shirts there if you haven't bought one already this week. And then obviously, you know, certainly it's not even the elephant in the room because everyone's talking about it, but that game 2 years ago, the Poly Narbonne game, 56-0 loss. I mean, there's guys on this team that started in that game, Amari Lyles, Joseph Wicker, and, of course, Iman Biggie Marshall. Those guys remember that game distinctly, you know, and have talked for the last few months about how they remember that game distinctly. But that's not even where the storyline's at. I also have to mention that Manny Douglas, the coach at Narbonne, was one of the other finalists who interviewed for the Poly job and was very intent, from what, we hear out there, to prove that, Poly should have hired me. I'm a real football coach. This guy they hired has no experience. So
not just here out there. He'll tell anybody who listens at this point.
I'd say, so it's going to be very interesting. I mean, there's a lot of pride and excitement on both sides. We saw it on we saw it on Twitter about 10 minutes after Poly's Crenshaw game ended. You know, someone's on there saying, "Oh, Poly's weak, lock them up," and the entire Poly team responds back and is like, "All right."
Yeah, basically, and being over there on campus, you just hear, the coaches are talking about it. They feel like they should take it personally, and there was some disrespect dished out from Narbonne recently in regards to the program, and it's just got a little bit of everything, like you said. I mean, it's the first time Antonio Pierce is coaching at a home game at Poly. He has talked about there's going to be some theatricality to it. He wants there to be a party. That's all he's been talking about.
Saying, I want Friday night to be a party and a show,
Yeah, there's been some things that he's shared with us that we'll let everyone wait and see that are going to add some excitement. They're working on maybe some celebrity appearances, things like that, as you would expect. And it's something that we haven't seen. Raul Lara was a much more business focus on football kind of guy, but the marketing thing has gone to a different level with Pierce, and we're seeing that with the new jerseys and things like that. So it really will be a spectacle. And then you have that revenge factor where they really want to send a message to Narbonne based on that 56-0 result, and then some of the talk that's been floating around.
Narbonne wants to send a message to them. I mean, it's messages going in all directions. We're like an email server at Vets on Friday night.
It's a group chat right now.
It was tough to get a read on Poly. Last week they took on a Crenshaw team that was not much of a reflection of what that program had been in years past.
The word overmatched came to mind.
You couldn't really tell, but either way, Poly looked very good. Was there something that we saw on Saturday that maybe concerned you a little bit? I'll take the first obvious ones. Lots of cramps, a few pretty major injuries, or could be major injuries going forward. Is there anything else that you guys saw that maybe somebody should look for on Friday night?
Well, the cramps, I think that's an isolated incident because it was so hot in that game. Poly's never going to play a game before 7 o'clock the rest of the season. It's much cooler at Vets. I think that was just something that happens early in the season at that weird start time, and that's not a problem.
Especially in a 95-degree heat game.
Exactly.
For sure.
It's only going to get colder from there. I think just... if things don't necessarily go to plan, how do they deal with adversity? Because they scored on all 6 of their drives in the first half. It went exactly how they planned it. They only made a couple mistakes in that game. But if they find themselves, we have to punt the first couple times, we give up a long play, suddenly we're losing, how do you respond to that? Because every team reacts differently. Now, they don't anticipate to fall behind to Narbonne, but, football things don't happen.
Narbonne's ranked in the state,
Right.
It's like they're a good team. It's not like we talked about Crenshaw. You go out there and you saw just the number of guys that were in jerseys, and you go, "Oh, this is not Mamba Crenshaw."
No,
you know what I mean? This is sort of a different era that they're transitioning into. That looks a little bit more like a traditional city section team. Narbonne, I think, still has that city section power, big program kind of aura about them right now. Mm-hmm. So I think they probably provide a better test. In terms of what would I say worry me, I was certainly surprised by, we saw Jack Jones from Poly really come out and struggle. And that's a kid that they've got very high expectations for, has very high expectations for himself, correctly so. He's a very talented kid. He just picked up an offer from USC this week, despite a rough game. He fumbled a punt return. And just didn't, I think he acknowledged even on Twitter, which I thought was really kind of a mature thing to see from a junior, that he basically tried too hard. And he said, I'm not going to set goals for myself anymore for individual games. I'm just going to go out and play football in the system and let the system work for me rather than, they threw me the ball, I have to score a 70-yard touchdown.
Right.
It's just hit the seam and go up. do a little bit less samba-ing on the field and get vertical. I think the biggest question, though, for anyone that's watched the Poly team for a while, as we have, is, hey, they just came off a big win. Are they going to come out cocky and overconfident on Friday, and kind of get smacked in the mouth a little bit? Because that program always has a tendency to fly really high on their wins and then have those big drop-offs sometimes afterwards. So I'm kind of curious to see that. Do they come out as excited and sharp as they did against Crenshaw? Like you said, you scored a touchdown on every drive in the first half. Or is it, okay, we're going to roll these guys, a couple turnovers, and suddenly things start panicking? And then what Tyler said, how do they handle adversity? Are they yelling at each other on the sideline and kind of splintering? Or is it, that'll be a first test for Pierce, certainly, with the first time they have to go through something like that. So I'm just curious to see how they come out. I think jerseys and the show and being at home helps with some of that stuff. But it can also lead into that, like, I'm thinking about all this other stuff rather than I got to get ready for this game and take this team seriously.
Well, and they're not going to score 56 points on the first play. So if they go out and they try to say, we have to beat them really bad, we have to put it on them, we have to do all this stuff, we have all this pressure, do they try too hard, or do they just go out and play football? If they do that, if they just go out and play football, I think they'll be fine.
Only one way to find out. Veterans Memorial Stadium, 7:30 on a Friday night.
Foggy Veterans Memorial Stadium.
It's going to be a scene. Championship hangovers for what? St. John Bosco and Norwalk are going to be at Cerritos College on Friday night. Both of those teams went to CIF finals last year, and both of them just whomped their competition on the opening weekend. Chris, these two teams, very different. Let's talk about their styles.
Yes, two very, very different teams. You have Bosco with that UCLA spread offense, very quick, wants to get those passes out to their athletes and let them do their stuff in space. And then on the other hand, you have Norwalk with that smash mouth double wing, just going to run it down your throat, and there's nothing you can do about it.
Well, yeah, the double wing's so old school, and then the spread offense, UCLA, really is the hot offense right now. It was the Oregon offense a few years back, and now it's the UCLA offense. But how difficult for these teams? I mean, if you just go to the game on Friday, you're not really thinking about the week of preparation where Norwalk is trying to teach their kids to run that UCLA offense, and UCLA proved on opening weekend that that's not easy, even if you are UCLA. And then you've got Bosco trying to learn how to run the double wing with all of their UCLA offense potential.
Very tough. The coaches were talking about it before. It's going to be hard to replicate what each other does. During Norwalk practice the other day, had a coach come over and tell me, like, hey, do you think Josh Roshan would come over to Norwalk and step in for us here a little bit? I was like, no, Coach, I don't think he's going to do that. But, very interesting to see how the two scout offenses give their defenses a look for this upcoming week, because it's going to be huge for these two offenses that, are very powerful and score a lot of points.
Well, you kind of ran into an interesting story. In this area, a lot of teams play each other, and these two teams have a common opponent, or should I say a common style opponent. The Dominguez Dons, who are actually playing Jordan at home this week, played Bosco last year. So Norwalk got to look at what a Bosco defense would do against that classic double wing.
Both sides brought up that Dominguez game. It's one of the first things they brought up when talking about the other. Bosco trounced Dominguez 40-7, and they point to that as saying, hey, look, we can stop this double wing. We have experience with it. Even though, the Dons run theirs out of the shotgun, so it's a little bit different. But I found it interesting that Coach Seniceros and the Norwalk coaches actually pointed to that Dominguez game as well. Looking at it on film, they saw that Dominguez could move the ball against Bosco, but they were just having a lot of trouble punching it in and capitalizing on that offense they were making in the middle of the field.
So that Norwalk offense has just got to maintain possession, keep the ball out of Rosen's hands, the classic run game against pass game. And maybe there's an upset here. I mean, obviously, if you were laying a line, Bosco would be huge favorites. But does anybody see an upset coming in this one?
I think the only people who see this upset is the Norwalk Lancers, everyone who's at that practice. And that's not a bad thing. I mean, they definitely believe they can go into Cerritos College and they can, shock the world is the motto they're using this week. They have full confidence in themselves. Talking to the players, what they saw in film versus Bosco and St. Louis, they saw that St. Louis was intimidated by playing Bosco, and they don't think that that's going to be them. They know they're a good team after what they did last year, the confidence they built. So they're excited about this opportunity of, playing basically the number one team in the nation. They're not going to, let that go through their gloves.
No more Rashad Penny there at Norwalk. Who was the one Lancer to watch this week?
Dylan Fa'amatau, defensive lineman. He's their guy, their senior. He's not scoring the touchdowns, but he's setting the tone for that physical, that tough Norwalk Lancer team. And it's going to be very interesting because, he's got about 10 offers right now. UCLA is very interested in him, that big defensive lineman. When he went to practice, they were saying he was bigger than some of the UCLA linemen already. And then obviously the UCLA connection is on the other side of the ball over there for Bosco, number 1 quarterback Josh Rosen. The future of that program, a lot of people are thinking that Coach Jim Mora is actually going to be at that game on the sidelines. So I was talking to Dylan after practice, and he had said, Mora wanted to go to one of his first 3 games, and he had mentioned that Bosco was one of those games, and his eyes kind of lit up like, oh, Bosco, like that's the game I got to be at probably, because I got my future quarterback, I probably have my future lineman right there. And he took Dylan and he said, Dylan, that game, if you get that free shot, if you see that opening, that opening that defensive coaches love and defensive players love on Rosen, don't go for that kill shot. And they both kind of laughed, and Dylan was like, I understand, Coach, I understand, but, that's not how I play. So he's still going to be going 110%, even if that might be his future, teammate on the other side.
Gotta love it. High school football at its best right there.
Speaking of Dominguez, the Dons are going to be hosting the Jordan Panthers on Friday night, which is a game that JJ is going to. We're very excited for that one.
Yeah, it's a double dip. We love the double dips. League v. league action. We really get a good look at what these guys have got, because we see them all summer, but we never see them hit each other. We don't really know what the real deal is. We will find out on Friday night. Funny story, last time we were at Dominguez for a Jordan Dominguez game, it was the John Ross show. Before he was John Ross III of Washington Huskies fame, he was just John Ross the boss. Pretty much scoring any possible way you can, leading the Panthers to a rousing 41-13 victory. I think we're going to see less points in this game.
I would agree with you. I mean, that's not neither team is really looking to come out and score a boatload of points.
Dominguez wants to run the ball. They've got those running backs coming back, but if I'm going to say...
It's going to be a fast game.
Yeah, it's going to be a fast game. I think they're both going to try to run the ball, and if I'm going to put a surprisingly good performance on a group, I think it's going to be the Jordan linebackers. I think those Jordan linebackers led by Terry Barrett. It's going to be really, really good for them, and they're going to need to be, because those running backs, Josh Ford, Harrison, those guys, they can get it done, as we saw them go all the way and lose to Norwalk late in the playoffs last year.
Yeah, they ball out, and they're definitely it's a tough offense to stop, and those kids run downhill, so those linebackers are going to have to be huge. But yeah, JJ, I don't expect to see a guy, catching a touchdown, returning one on a punt, and throwing a touchdown. Quick quiz for you guys, because I actually just watched this video the other day. Who did John Ross throw his touchdown to in that Dominguez game 2 years ago?
I was there, so I know.
Okay, does Mike know? Do you have a guess?
No.
You would know. You would know the name.
Let's just say.
Was it Hudson
That's my hint to you, and I'm doing the fight on thing.
I don't get it.
He doesn't get it, dude. JJ, you remember?
Of course, man. I was there.
It was Rashid Johnson, who is currently redshirting at USC.
Right, and who I totally was like... But he was at Cabrillo. Oh, right.
Started at Jordan, and those two were quite the dynamic duo.
You lose sight of the transfer maps. You know what I mean? It's like my brain wipes it every year at the end of the year, where you're like, oh, now that kid's at that school.
All right, so now we took you in the time machine a little bit. Sorry.
No, but one thing that's interesting about those games, and with any game we go to, because we had high hopes for high expectations for Donald Gordon this year, but I didn't think he was going to score 6 touchdowns. John Ross, you went into that year and knew he was a guy, but you didn't expect him to come out and do what he did. So it is these games, and it's nice for us, like you said, when it's a double dip game, because these are the games where you find out who those kids are, and maybe you are going to find out somebody comes out and does something that surprises you.
Last week we had a great San Gabriel Valley League Suburban League matchup between Downey and Mayfair. I love those games because I get to cover both leagues at the same time.
Double dip!
This week we got another one between Mayfair again and then the Guard Gladiators. Both teams are probably the hungriest in the league in their respective leagues because they came off very tough losses last week. Mayfair had that 21-7 lead over Downey, and then that defense just kind of collapsed and they gave up 28 points. You have the Gladiators who were going neck and neck and then lost a 2-point game to California. Scored twice in the fourth quarter, but just couldn't punch in for that 2-point conversion. So both teams really want to win here.
We were just talking about Bosco and Norwalk and how the Lancers are going to try to keep the ball away from the Braves. Kind of a similar situation here with the Monsoons trying to keep the ball away from the Gladiators, right?
Yes, the GAR always loves to throw the ball. They always love to put up points. That's their specialty, and they're not going to have any problems. But Mayfair is the one who had the problems last week throwing the ball and moving that ball. But what they did have going for them was those 2 backs of Querhall and then Faison, who had some really big runs in the second half. So I think Mayfair needs to go to them early and ride them all the way. If that's the case, then I think they can come out on top here. Because GAR, they're not sure about their defense. That's one of the big question mark for them this season.
You double dipped the chip. You ate the chip, and then you put it back in the dip. Los Alamitos at Paramount on Friday night.
You know I love me some dip, JJ. But I will say this might be my favorite double scoop, second only to the double scoop that I get at Paradis. But Los Al Paramount, I'm excited about this game. I circled it when I saw the schedules come out. It's Los Al's opener on the road, something that they are used to. They had 7 straight road games last year. Well, they actually have more home games, but they're starting on the road, going up against P-Mount, who we mentioned they were in a very close game against Wilson last week. They've got some stuff to work on, and Los Al's chomping at the bit, as you saw earlier today at practice.
Dude, I was at practice earlier today. Coach John Barnes said...
In year 35, by the way.
Yeah, by the way. Said, quote, "We've been preparing for this game since December." Which, fair enough, if you're looking at, like, one game at a time, got to take it one play at a time, one game at a time, well, they've been waiting for this one for quite some time. They are excited to hit somebody in a different color.
Yeah, it's almost December, like now, so it's almost been a year that they've been preparing. But they've got a big O-line, they've got great running backs, Denzel Brantley, Skylar Whitehead, guys that they want to let loose and run. And you saw Josh Kilson at Wilson. He had a good game running against that Paramount defense. So the P-Rats are going to have to shore that up, or else Los Al is going to keep the ball out of the hands of Cash Maluya and really run over them and wear them down. So a tough matchup for Paramount, but they will be at home. And this would be a huge message if they can win this game. But I'm looking at Los Al as the favorites coming in fresh with all this time to prepare, like you said.
This Los Al team looks really good. I really like him. And they've got one of the most exciting guys in the area. Exciting because he does it all. Blake Johnson is one of the best linebackers / defensive backs in the local area. He's a senior at Los Alamitos. He's also one of the best punters in the world.
Well, at the high school level. But yes, one of the top rated guys in this class, committed to Arkansas to go out there and punt. So an SEC level kid. And yeah, he's going to be on the field a lot playing linebacker in a defense that could be very good, especially in that linebacker secondary area.
Look out for a feature on Blake coming out in Friday's Press Telegram, and look out for all of the other previews in that paper as well.
If you're looking for big individual performances, especially at the quarterback spot, I think you need to be on the West on Friday, because Ricky Town, the USC committed quarterback, and St. Bonnie coming to play Cabrillo. And we saw Michael Levette III, the new quarterback who transferred in from Indiana. He was explosive for the Jags. They played Jay Serra to a scoreless tie at halftime, down 7-0 after 3. Things really got away, and it ended up a 40-0 game. But the Jags were able to do some things against that Trinity League foe. Now you're welcoming in St. Bonaventure, a perennial playoff team with a high-powered offense led by Town. So it'll be interesting to see who can put up the better line. We expected points last week, only got them late in the game from one team, but maybe a little more back and forth offensively and some big plays this Friday. At least that's what we're expecting to see.
That's it. That's all. There ain't no more. Another episode of Long Beach Sports Talk in the books. All of this Friday action will be on our websites, obviously on our YouTube channel, in the paper. You know where to be if you want to be in tune with local high school football. For Mike, for Tyler, for Chris, for JJ, for everybody else involved in this show, the Press Telegram, and the Gazette newspapers.
I'm just going to let it slide this week. It's too hot.
We'll see you in the stands this weekend, Long Beach. Take care.
Just gonna let it go.
Peace!